Yo, what's going on, snipers, and welcome to my 2008-09 roster build overview. So I have officially finished my 2008-09 rosters, and I am very excited to put this one out. It is pretty similar to my 2010-11 roster build I did last year, where I used a bit of advanced analytics from Evolving Hockey, that being offense and defense, so basically for offensive awareness and defensive awareness. Obviously, I don't use the JFresh cards yet, so because I don't have the money to afford a JFresh thing. But if I was to be able to afford it, basically, I would use the JFresh stuff for this type of thing. But most of this stuff is based on my own knowledge, and then also, like I said, the offensive awareness on players and the defensive awareness is going to be based on the evolving hockey stuff. But other than that, this is a very, very fun roster build, and yeah, I'm really excited to show you guys a little bit about it. I did do also some really cool test runs with this beforehand, and it's kind of crazy how some players are in this build, especially guys like Alex Ovechkin, because in my first year of simulating with this roster build, he had like a 71 goal season, which was nuts considering I was on medium scoring. Now he did have like 50 something in the second year, so it came a little bit more realistic, but he had a really good year. Eric Stahl had like 60 goals in the second season, which was really whack. So there should be a lot of interesting results when you use this in franchise mode. Now with this build, I recommend using still my created teams, but you don't have to. For my other builds, you do have to use all of the created teams, because there was a mistake that I didn't make, or that I did make, that I didn't notice until all these roster builds were out for like over a month, and that is that guys like Igor Shesterkin and Yaroslav Halak actually still had Rangers rights, so they were still showing up in their teams. So they would be putting like Henrik Lundqvist on the block and stuff like that. So if you're using any of my other roster builds, use the created teams for now, or basically go to, I think it was some team in the SHL. I think it was like Orebro or something like that. Find where Shesterkin and Halak are, drop them to free agency, then move them right back to that team, and you will be good to go. And then you could use the actual teams if you want to, but I would recommend still using created teams just for a authentic experience. So just a little heads up on that front. But yeah, let's get into a little bit of this roster overview. So let's go to my created teams, or actually let's just go to created team rosters. We'll go through the rosters first, and then I'll show you guys the created teams, because there is a lot of new AHL teams and stuff like that, teams that were rebranded, that type of thing. I also did give goaltenders and players to all AHL affiliates almost, except for a few teams. Also, there is, like, I will go through a little bit of the setup process for franchise mode. I didn't actually add that to the website yet, but more than likely by the time you guys see this video, there will be a setup page on how to set it up properly for franchise mode. So, now the Albany River Rats in my 05-06 build, they were the New Jersey Devils AHL affiliate. Now they're Carolina's affiliate, so that's why Justin Peters down there. I also did something really interesting, and I put guys that still play in the in Europe and stuff like that into their AHL team that they were on in 08-09. So Daniel Manzatto, this guy that still plays in real life, he's actually going to be in the AHL affiliate for Carolina, because he actually played in Albany that season. So I kind of just did that just as a little extra thing, so that way at least some of the real players that are down there in the AHL are actually making sense. So that's a little bit neat. Let's go over to Anaheim, where you have two good goaltenders, Jaguar and Hiller. When I was doing my test run, they immediately put Jaguar on the block, but they didn't trade him year one. But it makes sense for him to be on the block, considering he was in Toronto, I believe, the year after this, or 2 years after this. So there's their goaltending. Defensively, you can see led by Scott Niedermayer and Chris Pronger. But yeah, it's a very interesting build in terms of like offensive awareness and stuff like that. So like if we look at somebody like Scott Niedermayer, for example, he's got 90 offensive awareness, 86 defensive. But if you look for somebody like Chris Pronger, you got 88 defense and 88 offense, because Chris Pronger was better defensively than Niedermayer. But then you go to, say, a guy like Ryan Whitney, I guess. He was not very great defensively. He's got an 84 defensive awareness and an 86 offensive. You go to a guy like Francois Beauchemin, 82 and 82. He wasn't really that good, apparently, in both ends of the ice at this point in time. Guys like Brett Hedican have not that great defensive awareness, but have great offensive awareness, even though he was like a DFD kind of. in a sense. And then you also have like Sheldon Brookbank, who's kind of also affected by that too. So some of these teams have players that have really low offensive awareness and defensive awareness based on how the team was at that point in time. So if a team was really bad defensively, most of the players on it will have bad defensive awareness. If you go to a team that's really good defensively like Minnesota, most of them have good defensive awareness. So just keep that in mind. Here is Anaheim's offense. Not going to spend too much time going through each individual player or else this video will be way too long and I don't want you guys sitting here all day. Obviously, I want you guys to experience this roster build for yourself. Also, I did have to adjust the salaries on a lot of players to make teams cap compliant. So like Ilya Kovalchuk, I believe was making like 6.4 or something like that, but I had to up them to 7 million just to get the Atlanta Thrashers to being cap compliant, because they're max cap in this roster build. I can't remember how much it is, but they were basically below the minimum, so I had to up a lot of players' salaries on their team, especially the New York Islanders, because the New York Islanders were like $12 million under the cap. So I had to up contracts on guys like Rick DiPietro for them. So, but yeah, this is a very exciting build. Guys like Zach Bogosian, obviously not that great defensively, but he had good offensive awareness at this point in time. So his offensive awareness is a 95. It's only based off of 1 year for most of these guys, or for the rookies at least, because the rookies, obviously, they only have 1 year of stats. Well, guys like Exelby, who also played in 07-08 when advanced analytics became a thing, he'll have 2 years worth of stats to go off of for offensive and defensive awareness. Kari Lettinen's usually a big free agent in year 1 if Atlanta doesn't decide to sign him, which in my test run they didn't. So that was a little bit interesting. Also, this one's a little bit of an interesting one to note. So Pascal Leclerc was traded for Antoine Vermette at the trade deadline, but he was injured for the rest of the year. So I basically have him on like an LTIR type of status, even though he was technically in the NHL again next year. So he's down to a 70 overall at 26. If you want to up his overall, you always can, but I recommend just keeping him in the AHL for the year just for more realism purposes. But there's that. And like I said, I added some real players to the AHL team. So Greg Molden, Peter Regan are also in the AHL for the Binghamton Centers, just to give it a little bit more realisticness to the AHL affiliates. Now this Boston Bruins team is pretty damn good. Obviously, they were very close to winning a Stanley Cup. Obviously, some of these guys were actually not on the Stanley Cup winning team, so you could see they moved out a few pieces between their Cup win and whatnot. But yeah, it's pretty interesting to see what some of these players look like. Bergeron's good on both ends of the ice. Not a surprise on that front. Yeah, it should be interesting to see how this actually works in franchise mode. Like I said, I did 2 years of test simming, so I don't know how good it actually sims for like all 3 or 4 years. But if you guys run into any like really big issues with this roster build, please let me know, and I will maybe do an update on it. But other than that, it should work pretty much as I expect it to. I'm pretty certain on that. So I don't know what roster build I'm going to be doing next, because I know Crash Andrews wants me to do 1992, 1993, so there is a chance I would be doing that. But I also know that 1992-93, since that's like a way back in the past, I would have to create a lot more players. Now, I do have everybody's face because I technically did that build in NHL 22, but I never put it out because I didn't finish like a lot of the extra teams, but at least for NHL 23, I won't have to create those extra teams. So there is a chance I do that for my next roster build, but there's also 1999-2000 I'd like to do, but I am kind of running out of time for roster builds probably in NHL 23, just because it takes me at least a month or so to finish a roster build, and by the end of that, it will be already like in the summer. So it's like, I don't really know how much more roster builds I'll have left this year, but I want to put out as much as possible, obviously. I just really hope that some of these rosters kind of carry over afterwards. Like, hopefully they have like a server that kind of goes with all the roster builds going on forward, so that way I could use these roster builds directly in NHL 24 without any problems. Because if they had something like that, I would literally just be able to download one of my old rosters, and then I would just be able to build directly off of that, which would be a lot easier than having to basically remove the entire NHL again. So EA, if you're listening, and if you have not worked towards that, you need to work towards that, because literally it's kind of ridiculous that like save files aren't translating over to the next game, that type of thing. As I think that's kind of a crucial thing for roster builds, in my opinion. This Columbus team made the playoffs. This was the team that got swept by the Detroit Red Wings, so you are going to see a young Steve Mason, who was actually insane that season, but I couldn't make him obviously too high, because I didn't want to make him like friggin' like 90 overall like he could have been that year, so I made him like a normal starting goaltender with starter potential only, but obviously, he's kind of a little bit high overall rated, but it's because of how good of a year, like I said, he had. Like, he had like 12 or 10 or 11 shutouts, somewhere around that. I don't remember how much shutouts it was, but yeah, he was insane. And then, yeah, Columbus doesn't really have a backup goaltender since they got rid of Leclerc, which is interesting. This Dallas team missed the playoffs, but Stefan Robida, this guy is actually really, really good. When I was looking at his advanced analytics, he had really good offensive stats and really good defensive stats. So you can see he's got 93 offensive awareness and 91 defensive. Like, I didn't realize he was that good, but he made the All-Star game this year in Montreal. So that was kind of interesting, considering he was a former Montreal Canadian. But yeah, this Dallas team somehow missed the playoffs. Brendan Morrow is not in this build because he missed majority of the season with an injury. There was another player that I could have got rid of because of an injury he suffered early in the year, but I really wanted to add him, so I decided to add him. You guys will see him near the end of the roster overview portion. Here's the Red Wings team that lost to Pittsburgh in the Cup Finals, that won the Cup the year before. Very, very strong team. When I was doing some test sims, them and Pittsburgh always simulate really, really well. Not a surprise, though. Here is Edmonton, which, yeah, it's kind of an interesting team. Sheldon Souray actually scores a ton of goals in franchise mode, which is good, considering he was kind of like a goal-scoring defenseman. Kind of similar to Shea Weber in a sense, I guess, but not as good defensively, in my opinion. But yeah, a lot of the good young players on Edmonton. But obviously, they had work to do. This was not the best team that Edmonton ever put out, for sure. Florida, also not that great of a team, but some solid pieces there, obviously, to build around, like Nathan Horton. But they don't have Olli Jokinen anymore, because Olli Jokinen had moved on to Phoenix. And in this roster build, he is with the Calgary Flames, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I think. Yeah, I think so. Got to remember where certain players are, because it's just like, wait, was he with the Rangers? He was with this team? Because like all these roster builds kind of like congogulate. I don't even know what word I'm trying to say, but they all kind of morph together in my mind in a sense. So there's that. I also had quite a bit of depth goalies, as you could see. Like Barry Brust is in here, even though he's never going to get to play in the NHL likely. I had to add this guy because I already had him made for my last roster build, so I was like, might as well move him over to the AHL team and keep him in the build. Same with like David Lenevue, for example. So yes, the Iowa Chops are in this build, pretty dope. I will show you guys maybe a few jerseys just because there is some cool ones from the AHL. Most of the NHL ones you've probably seen before, since they were probably all in my 2011 build. The LA Kings are a really fun team. Now, this team didn't make the playoffs yet, but you have some really good building blocks. Kopitar, Doughty, Wayne Simmons, for example. Like, it would be a really fun team to build this LA Kings team up, probably, and win some Stanley Cups. Also, you can see I added like Oscar Muller to the Manchester Monarchs, as well as Azevedo, since they were there in real life. But yeah, this is a very exciting build, I think. It's probably going to be my favorite build I've done since 10-11, just because obviously I do remember this year a lot more than some other years. It's kind of funny because literally, like, I'm talking to like guys in my Discord, and one of them, I'm shout out to Paul. He is literally the youngest person in my Discord, and yeah, he was born around this time, I'm pretty sure. So it's kind of crazy how much of a different reach I have with viewers and stuff like that. Oh yeah, I wanted to show you guys actually Minnesota by example. So this team was one of the best defensive teams in the NHL, but I think they missed the playoffs if I remember right. Look at this. Zidlichky, 89 defense, 91 for Brent Burns at this point. 93 for Kim Johnson. Didn't realize he was that good defensively. 91 for Nick Schultz. 89 for Skula. And an 83 for Marc-Andre Bergeron because he was more of an offensive D-man. and then you have 85 for Curtis Foster. So very solid defensive team, and then obviously Nick Backstrom was really good between the pipes too. So because he was also an all-star this year. Also, Carey Price only an 83 overall, but I think that is fair considering this was his first full season in the NHL. And yeah, 83 overall at 21 and high elite potential. He should jump up to a 90 plus. Obviously, I could make him a franchise kind of goalie. I know Habs fans say he's a franchise goalie, but obviously I think high elite is better, and he could develop into a franchise goalie in franchise mode still. So, but they do have a good defensive core in front of them. Kind of weird seeing guys like Matthew Schneider back in Montreal at the end of his career pretty much. Also, Kovalev and Koivu on their last years of their deals in Montreal. You can see there's actually quite a bit of expiring deals in Montreal. So this team turned over quite a bit the year afterwards. Because Koivu would go to the Ducks. Kovalev would go to, where was it? The Ottawa Senators. That type of thing. Also, you can see the All-Star teams are both in this. So you got the West and the East. Both of them have some pretty cool jerseys. I'll show you guys those probably for sure. Here's the Nashville Predators. Kind of weird seeing Radek Bonk over there, considering he wasn't there too long near the end of his career. Also, this guy I added to the roster build. This was the first time I've ever made Antti Pilstrom. He only played like 40-something games this year, but Nashville needed to have another player, so there he is. Really good defensive core in front of them. Like, look how good some of these young D-men are. You got Weber, you got Suter, you got Hamhuis, Zanin, DeVries, Klein. That's pretty good. And then a young Pekka Rinne as well. So hopefully Pekka Rinne develops into being a really good goaltender in franchise mode, considering he was a great one in real life. Marty Brodeur still rocking a 91 at this point in time, but the backups not so much. Brodeur actually missed quite a bit of games this season, so they did actually rely on Weeks and Clemenson quite a bit. But obviously I can't replicate that fully in franchise mode. But this team was a higher up seed, but they were knocked out in the first round by the Carolina Hurricanes. So that was a big upset back in these times. This might be a little bit of a long video. Hopefully it's not too long for you guys, but if you want, I might put some timestamps for certain teams so you guys can see certain teams at certain times. So that way you don't have to just like wait for a long time. This Islanders team is so bad though. This is the team that ended up getting John Tavares in the draft, so a lot of good young players still, like Franz Nielsen, Josh Bailey, whatnot. But yeah, when your top forward is an 83 overall, not very good. The best player, though, on the team is Mark Streit. He represented them in the All-Star game. And then you have the goaltending. You have Rick DiPietro on a 13-year deal. I had to up his salary by $1 million to make this team cap compliant, but still, 13-year deal for DiPietro at an 82 overall is a bit iffy, and he also has a very bad durability, so he probably won't stay healthy for you in franchise mode. That is if you play with injuries on. But yeah, this Rangers team also kind of mid in terms of defense. Like, it's not the best defensive core, but it's not the worst either. The offensive core, kind of surprised that Drury and Gomez and stuff like that only came out as 85s. But yeah, this is an interesting Rangers team. Marcus Naslund being there, it's kind of weird, but it is what it is. They have a lot of grit too with like Voros or Sean Avery. So the Norfolk Admirals, this is now not Chicago's AHL affiliate. This is now the Tampa Bay Lightning's AHL affiliate. So Rico Helenius is down there. Here's Ottawa. This team missed the playoffs, but they do have some pretty solid pieces still. Forward-wise, let me actually go to forwards. Here we go. Spezza, Alfie, and Heatley, I made them all 88s because they weren't as good at this point in time. Obviously, Heatley would request a trade in the off-season, or right before the start of the season in 09-10. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting because I decided to try and see what the trade values would be like for him and against Jonathan Chichu, McCulloch, that type of thing. And it seems like San Jose wouldn't even take Heatley for Chichu and McCulloch and a second-rounder or whatever it was in real life, which is kind of crazy, but usually that top line usually simulates really, really well. Christoph Schubert playing forward because he did play forward at this point. We go to Peoria, which I think has a few goalies. Yeah, Ben Bishop being the most notable one. He usually gets dealt by St. Louis quite early on just because he's got the trade value. At least in my test him, he got traded to the Dallas Stars, which was kind of cool. So there's that. Philadelphia. Pretty solid team. Obviously, they would go to the Cup Finals the year after this, but a lot of these players weren't even on this team anymore at that point, I think. Like, Andrew Alberts definitely wasn't. I'm pretty sure Randy Jones wasn't, too. I think Randy Jones was in Tampa or LA, something like that. But very good forward core here in Philadelphia, and that's why they're such a good team. Like, the bottom six isn't the best, but the top, like, nine is pretty damn good when you have, like, Lupul, you have Knubel, Hartnell, Simone Gagne. We go to the Philadelphia Phantoms. I think they have some goalies. Yeah, they have one goalie, that's J.S. Aubin, who is now an AHL goaltender at this point in time because he kind of just dropped off quite a bit, and then he went overseas, I think, the year after this. We go to Phoenix. Brizgalov and Montoya, not the best goaltending combo. Zbigniew McCulloch is a really underrated defender. He was phenomenal defensively. He's got 93 defensive awareness. I didn't realize he was that good, but advanced analytically, he was very, very solid. Forward-wise, led by Shane Doan, also Matthew Lombardi, who came over from the Calgary Flames. This Phoenix team is also kind of interesting because they do have a lot of solid young prospects and whatnot. You have like Nigel Dawes, you have Mikkel Bodker, Kyle Turris, Enver Leeson, Victor Tikhonov. Like, there's definitely building blocks there for you to build up a good Phoenix team. Here's the Cup-winning Pittsburgh Penguin team, led by Crosby, who's a 91 only just because I had to, just because of his defensive awareness. He wasn't that good defensively at this point in time, so that's why he's not that great at it. But that's why he's only a 91. I also made Ovechkin a 91 just because I couldn't have one better than the other, or else I feel like there would be a lot of people outraging. But at this point in time, it would make sense kind of to have Ovechkin maybe be a little bit better since he is an older player. But yeah, this Pittsburgh team is absolutely filthy. Like, their lowest forward other than Craig Adams is an 81. Absolutely nuts. They're the only team that has two depth players on their rosters, one depth forward and one depth defenseman, just because they are the cup-winning team. So that's why it's like that. Sergei Gonchar usually plays really good in franchise mode as well. Seen him have like 20 goals and like 80-something points. And there's Fleury and Matthew Guerin. We head to the Portland Pirates. Jonas Enroth is the only one down there because this is now Buffalo's AHL affiliate. We head to the Quad City Flames. I, for some reason, had to add Leland Irving and Matt Keatley. So shout out to these two guys. I added them to the AHL team just for the complete memes. So Calgary fans has something to cheer about, Josh Tordman is down there for the Phoenix Coyotes in the AHL. We head to San Jose, Nabokov and Boucher. This team won the President's Trophy this year, I'm pretty sure, but they were knocked out in the first round by the Anaheim Ducks. Like, that was a really big upset. Like, this team should have probably done a lot better, but yeah, the first round exit, big oof. But yeah, they have some really solid pieces. Jonathan Cheechoo sliding quite a bit since his 05-06 season where he was scoring obviously 56 goals. So, and they also have some grit. They added like Travis Moen, Jody Shelley, so JR is there, which is really weird. I don't even ever think of JR as a Shark, but I think when I was going to Sens games in 2009, I'm pretty sure I went to a game where Jeremy Roenick was a Shark, which is kind of cool, considering obviously he wasn't there for a very long time. We head to Springfield, which is Edmonton's AHL affiliate now at this point. They have Danny Sabern, who was acquired for Guerin, but he never played a game with Edmonton. And you also have Devin Dubnyk as well in the minors. We head to St. Louis. This team was knocked out in the first round by the Vancouver Canucks. There they are. Not the best defensive team. And then forward-wise, this is the one guy I was mentioning earlier. Paul Correa was injured in November, but I decided to add him to this franchise mode type of thing just because I feel like St. Louis wouldn't simulate good enough without him. So decided to add him in, but he does have really low durability at 56. He did play a lot of games the year after this, but his durability definitely wasn't that great. He only played in like 11 games, I think, this year. But he was like point per game or over point per game, I think it was. I can't remember exactly. But there's St. Louis, Syracuse Crunch, which is Columbus's AHL affiliate still. They have Sebastian Dom, who I moved over there because he actually played for this team at that point in time. So that's an interesting one. Tampa Bay, this team is also really bad though. They are one of the worst teams in the build, just like the New York Islanders. Obviously, they drafted Victor Hedman this year. But yeah, Mike Smith was okay, but Rambo and McKenna, not so much. And then defensively, yeah, you can see this team was not good defensively before they had Victor Hedman. Ranger, Mazzaros are your top two. Then you have like Krejcik, Melikar, Malik, Welch, and Mats maybe even made it, which is nuts. And then you go to their forward core. You got some good pieces, but still their depth is not that good. St. Louis, LeCavalier, Malone, Prospel, a young Stamkos in his first season. But after that, like Hall, Downey, Artukin, Pettinger, Craig, Martins, Carsons. How does this guy get in? Well, he played between Boston and Tampa this year. The Latvian. And yeah, that was the first time he's ever been in a build for mine. But yeah, that Tampa offensive core, not the greatest. Unless that top line does really good damage and if Stamkos scores a lot of goals. I should probably up Stamkos to being a franchise player. But I feel like a high lead 82 at 18, he might develop into a franchise anyways. So yeah, just a little heads up on that. This is the Toronto team that a lot of people like to meme, and I like to meme them as well. When Lee Stempniak is there, Nick Hagman, Jamal Mayers, like, Toronto fans are not going to like this roster build just because of this team. It's a very oof team. Defensive core is not actually that terrible. Like, Jeff Finger was actually a lot better than people, like, said. I'd say, like, good from an offensive standpoint. Defensively, kind of average, but Jonas Frogen is there even. This guy barely played in the NHL, I think only 41 games. Luke Schen's in his first season. And then goalie-wise, this goaltending quad is kind of ridiculous. So, basically, they brought in Martin Gerber from Ottawa. He was not too good. You have Vesa Toskala, who was absolute trash this year and out of the NHL but a year after this. You have Curtis Joseph, who was too old, and he decided to retire at the end of the season. And Olaf Kolzig technically was a Leaf, but never played a game for them. He was dealt to them at the trade deadline this year, but he was injured for the rest of it, so he's kind of like on LTIR mode in a sense as well, 70 at 38. But yeah, this was the last hurrah of his career, and yeah, he never got to play a game with the Leafs because of, I think it was like a knee injury that he had surgery for, so he's basically there if you want to actually put him in the lineup and let him play a game as the Leafs, but more than likely Toronto will send him to the AHL in franchise mode. Then we have Vancouver. Bobby Lou as the starter. LaBarbera and Sanford, some solid goaltenders. Really good defensive core here in Vancouver as well. Shane O'Brien, very physical guy. And then forward-wise, Henrik and Daniel Sedin. This is a really meme squad of a Canucks team too. Pavel Dimitra's over there, rest in peace to him. Matt Sundin as a Canuck is one of the weirdest things ever still, and Toronto fans are not going to like this. If you're doing Toronto as a franchise mode, I'd recommend trying to trade for Sundin just to bring him back, but obviously I don't think the Canucks would want to move him, but it's just so weird seeing him as a Canuck, like even as a Sens fan. Like I barely remember this guy as a Vancouver Canuck, but he is there. And yeah, this is a very interesting Canucks team. Obviously, they went to the Cup Finals a few years later, but most of these guys were not on the team, I'm pretty sure. Like, yeah, Hordichuk, Johnson, Pyatt, Wellwood, Bernier, Sundin, Dimitra were all not there in 2011. And then, yeah, defensively, I think O'Brien and Vananen definitely weren't there. And goalie-wise, LaBarbera and Sanford weren't there. So they made quite a bit of changes in those short span. And then here in Washington, you got Theodore and Johnson and Semyon Varlamov. Varlamov actually started the playoffs in the NHL for the Capitals, or he actually played a couple games in the playoffs, or quite a few games, because Jose Theodore, I think, got injured. I could be wrong with that. And yeah, Brent Johnson is also there. Usually they try and trade him right away, just because they want to get Varlamov in, which kind of makes sense. Here is their defensive core. And then forward-wise, obviously, Alex Ovechkin, 91 overall, high franchise sniper. He usually scores a lot of goals in franchise mode, so you guys are going to like him. Also, Semin, Backstrom. For some reason, when I did a test him, the AI coach decided to put Kozlov as the top-line center instead of Backstrom, which had Kozlov having like a 90-point season, which kind of sucked. But I would rather see the AI decide to put Backstrom on that top line still, because he would be nuts next to Ovechkin. So there is that, and one last team in the AHL, the Worcester Sharks, I should say, I guess, if I'm talking from a Massachusetts standpoint. Thomas Greiss is down there. So there you go, there's the teams. let's quickly go over a few jerseys, and then I think that'll be it for this episode. And more likely when I put out my roster build, it will still be under the normal titles that I normally have for my roster builds. I'll probably put up a screenshot at the end of this video. I also should mention about who you should be substituting teams out for and whatnot for franchise mode, but I don't know if I will do that in this video. I'll probably just have it on the website, so make sure you check that out. But let's go to play now here so I could show you guys a couple cool jerseys. All the NHL ones are pretty much the exact same as my 2010-11, I think. So I'll show you guys, I guess, a couple AHL ones. So yeah, here's Albany River Rats. Obviously, like I said, now they're Carolina's affiliate. Those are all the same. Binghamton's got their updated jerseys a little bit more. These look pretty cool. What else we got here? Bridgeport. Pretty much just looks like Islanders jerseys. Let's see. Yeah, I'm pretty sure most of these NHL ones are the same as my 2010-11 roster build, so I'm not going to go over them. We'll go through most of the AHL ones, I guess, just because it's a little bit of an update for most of these ones from my 05-06 one, just to be more accurate. Like here's Houston, for example. Iowa. This is one that was not in the last roster build. Obviously, this is Anaheim's AHL team, and man, I love how these jerseys turned out. Especially the black one. It looks really sick. And then I don't think... Oh, I did give them an alternate. Yeah, they did have, like, I guess, like an event jersey I gave them. Because some teams I gave event jerseys to in the AHL, but... Yeah, pretty much all the AHL teams got, like, their updated jerseys and whatnot. So Manitoba has now got, like, this type of look instead. And then I didn't give them an alternate. Massachusetts Devils, which is technically the Lowell Devils, is now New Jersey's AHL team. Just in case I didn't mention that. What else we got here for AHL teams? Actually, the All-Star jerseys. The All-Star jerseys, got to show you guys these. So here is the Eastern All-Stars. Looks really, really sick. I think these turned out really well. And then here is the Western All-Stars, which is pretty much the reverse of that. So I think I like the Easterns a little bit better, but still really sick jerseys there. We head over to Norfolk Admirals. These are pretty cool AHL jerseys. Now that they're Tampa's AHL affiliate, they look pretty sick. I don't think... Yeah, I didn't give them an alternate. This is still one from their Chicago days. Peoria, a little bit of an update to their jerseys as well. So there we go. Philadelphia Phantoms. I think I gave them Lehigh Valley jerseys, if I'm not mistaken, but these still look pretty cool, some of them. So there you go. Portland Pirates, I think, stayed the same. Nope, they changed. Oh, yeah, I remember these now. So there you go. Quad City Flames in their first AHL season, or one of their first. I think 07-08 might have been their first, actually, because they used to be like the Omaha Axerbin Knights in the 05-06 build. Here's a new look San Antonio team, because they didn't have blue on their jerseys anymore. So they're just gone to that black and gray style that you guys might remember from the NHL 09 to NHL 15 days. I don't remember when they left. Springfield Falcons also getting a little bit of an updated look, since they're now Edmonton's affiliate. Syracuse Crunch getting a little bit of an update in terms of just how they look. I like that logo though, and that ape, it's pretty cool. I think it looks kind of similar to the Crunch logos. So, and finally the Worcester Sharks, looking like this. Boom. And that is it. So anyways, guys, that's going to do it for this 2008-09 roster build overview. So I more than likely will have this roster build up before you guys see this video. And I will also have on my website a little bit of a tutorial on how to set this up for franchise mode. Make sure you take a look on how to set it up, because it's a lot easier than the other roster builds to set up for franchise mode. But just to make sure it's 100% accurate to the time period, obviously you should follow those steps. So anyways, let me know what you guys think down below. And I'll see you guys next time.